The Earl of Wexbury chose French because cruelty sounded cleaner in a foreign tongue before 80 guests, with candlelight flashing over diamonds and polished silver. He looked directly at Miss Arabella Fenwick and said she was a well-dressed beggar, too ignorant to recognize her own humiliation. He was wrong about the ignorance. Before the winter ended, he would learn how wrong he had been about everything else. This is a story of a woman dismissed as silent decoration, an old disgrace written in 3 countries, and a proud man forced to decide whether an apology was merely a word or the surrender of every lie that had protected him. The ballroom at Calder House smelled of beeswax, orange peel, and damp wool drying beneath expensive perfume. Snow tapped against the tall windows in small hard grains. Near the musicians' gallery, 6 dozen candles burned so brightly that the gilt leaves on the ceiling seemed to tremble. Arabella stood beside Lady Maud Calder's chair with an ivory fan folded between her gloved hands. Her gown was dove-gray silk, 3 seasons out of fashion, and altered twice at the waist. It had belonged to Lady Maud's married niece before it had belonged to her. The color made Arabella nearly invisible beside women dressed in garnet, emerald, and gold. For 3 years, invisibility had allowed gentlemen to discuss debts in front of her and ladies to repeat rumors without lowering their voices. It also allowed the Earl of Wexbury to mistake her silence for emptiness. Rowan Harcourt stood across the room in a black tailcoat cut so severely that even the folds seemed disciplined. At 32 he had the hard, finished handsomeness of a portrait no one dared move from the principal staircase. His dark hair curled at the temples despite the pomade meant to restrain it. One hand rested behind his back. The other held a glass of untouched champagne. Beside him stood Lady Cecily Ormond, fair-haired, richly dressed, and widely expected to become the next Countess of Wexbury before the season ended. Lady Cecily followed his gaze. "Your aunt's companion is watching you." "Lady Maud's companion watches everyone," Rowan answered. "Does she understand anything she sees?" The question was spoken in English. The answer was not. Rowan turned slightly toward the Comte de Rochefort, a French émigré with silver whiskers, and said in smooth, unhurried French, "Mademoiselle Fenwick is my aunt's newest act of charity. A well-dressed beggar with the education of a kitchen stool, one may speak freely before her." The Comte did not laugh. Lady Cecily did. 2 gentlemen nearby understood enough to smile. A young woman hid her amusement behind a peacock feather fan. The laughter spread in the small, cowardly way laughter often did when rank had given it permission. Arabella felt each sound land. Her fingers tightened around the ivory fan until one carved stick pressed into her palm. Lady Maud shifted in her chair. "Arabella?" Arabella placed one hand lightly on the older woman's shoulder. Then she crossed the strip of polished floor between herself and the Earl. The musicians continued playing, but their rhythm faltered as heads turned. Rowan watched her approach with the faint impatience of a man expecting to be asked for a favor. Arabella stopped close enough that he could see the small scar beneath her left eyebrow. In flawless French, she said, "A kitchen stool, my lord, has at least the dignity of supporting those who depend upon it." The Comte's brows rose. Lady Cecily's smile vanished. Arabella turned to Signor Belandi, the Italian silk merchant, standing near the mantel, and continued in his language. "In Florence, my mother taught me that a gentleman's character is clearest when he believes the woman before him cannot answer." Belandi lowered his glass. "Your mother taught you well, Signorina." Arabella then looked past Rowan toward Baron von Eltz, a Prussian commercial envoy whose expression had changed from boredom to delight. "In German," she said, "and my father taught me that arrogance is the refuge of a man who has run out of evidence." The ballroom went still. Even the musicians surrendered. 80 guests looked at Rowan Harcourt, Earl of Wexbury, and waited to discover what remained of a powerful man when his cruelty had been translated for the entire room. Color rose along his cheekbones. His champagne glass remained perfectly level. "Miss Fenwick," he said at last. "My lord." His eyes narrowed at her name. That was when Arabella understood the insult had not been casual. "Fenwick," he repeated. "You are Sir Elias Fenwick's daughter." The air changed again. 3 years earlier, Sir Elias Fenwick had been accused of selling diplomatic correspondence to foreign speculators. One intercepted dispatch had sent a British delegation toward a compromised road outside Genoa. The resulting attack had killed 2 men. One had been Rowan's elder brother, Captain Matthew Harcourt. Sir Elias had denied the charge until fever took his voice. He died without a trial, without a pension, and without enough money to bury himself. Arabella had inherited his books, his stained dispatch box, and the disgrace attached to his name. "I am," she said. Rowan set down his glass. "Then perhaps arrogance is not the only refuge available to those who have run out of evidence." The blow was quiet. It was worse for being quiet. Lady Maud pushed herself upright with her ebony cane. "That is enough, Wexbury." Arabella's face did not alter, though heat gathered behind her eyes. "No, my lady, his lordship has said exactly what he intended." She looked at Rowan. 3 languages were required to correct your assumption," she said. "One would have been sufficient for an apology." Then she turned away. She crossed the ballroom without hurrying, passed beneath the painted gods on the ceiling, and entered the cold gallery beyond. Only when the doors closed behind her did she discover that one ivory stick of her fan had cracked beneath her fingers. She did not cry, not there. Outside the gallery windows, snow erased the carriage tracks. By breakfast, half of London would know that Sir Elias Fenwick's daughter had shamed an earl. By noon, no respectable household might employ her. The gallery door opened. Arabella expected Lady Maud. Rowan stepped through instead. He closed the door behind him, shutting out the violins. "You should not be here alone with me, my lord. The door is made of glass. So was the ballroom. It did not improve your conduct." His mouth tightened. "You concealed your identity. I introduced myself on the evening your aunt engaged me. If you chose not to listen, that is not concealment. My brother died because of your father. Your brother died because someone sent him onto that road. You have never proved it was my father. His cipher was on the dispatch, a cipher used by 9 men in the same office. His private seal was found beside it. After his rooms had been searched by officials, servants, and your cousin." At that Rowan's gaze sharpened. "What has my cousin to do with it?" The fan's ivory guard had split near its brass pin. Something dark and thin showed between the loosened pieces. She folded her fingers over it before Rowan could see. "Lord Gideon Strath accompanied the inquiry," she said. "He removed 3 boxes of my father's papers. None were returned. Gideon served my father. He tried to spare your family a public prosecution. That is the version he gave you." Rowan took a step nearer. Cedar soap and cold air clung to his coat. "Do you possess another? I possess questions." "You have made it clear what you think of people who lack evidence." The door opened again. Lady Maud entered, leaning on her cane. "Wexbury, return to the ballroom and tell Lady Cecily your headache has made you temporarily witless. Aunt, and you will not speak to Miss Fenwick again until you can distinguish grief from guilt." Rowan's jaw worked once. Then he bowed to Arabella. It was a correct bow. It was not an apology. When he had gone, Lady Maud took Arabella's hands. "I am sorry. You did not say it. I invited the man who did. Come home with me." Arabella nodded. As they walked, she kept the broken fan hidden in the folds of her skirt. Only in her small bedchamber after midnight did she pry the ivory guard apart. A narrow strip of paper had been folded around the pin. The writing was faded brown. She recognized the hand before she read a word. Her father had hidden the message inside her mother's fan. The same hand betrays itself in every tongue. Ask Wexbury, who profited from Matthew's death. Below those 2 English lines were 3 unfinished phrases. 1 French, 1 Italian, 1 German, and a small mark shaped like a thorn inside a circle. Arabella read the message until the candle burned low. For 3 years she had possessed the evidence. She had simply been holding it in her hand. At 10 the next morning, Rowan Harcourt arrived at his aunt's house without Lady Cecily. Lady Maud kept him waiting in the blue drawing-room for 22 minutes. It was a form of punishment she considered more civilized than shouting. When she finally entered, Arabella walked beside her with the repaired fan tucked into her sash. Rowan rose. He had slept badly. The faint darkness beneath his eyes did not invite pity, but it did make him look less like a portrait and more like a man. "Miss Fenwick," he began. "I owe you an apology," Lady Maud supplied. His glance flicked toward his aunt. "Yes." Arabella waited. Rowan faced her fully. "What I said last night was unworthy of my name and indefensible in any language. I intended to humiliate you. I succeeded only in displaying my own prejudice. I am sorry. It was direct. It was also private." Arabella had learned that powerful men preferred private remorse for public injuries. It allowed them to keep the respect of the room that had watched them wound someone. "I accept that you regret it," she said. His brow furrowed. "That is not the same as accepting my apology." "No." Lady Maud hid a smile behind her teacup. Rowan drew a slow breath. "Then tell me what is required." "Truth." She placed the ivory fan on the table and opened the damaged outer guard. The hidden strip lay within. Rowan stared at his brother's name. "Where did you find this?" "Inside the fan I carried last night. It belonged to my mother. My father repaired it after she died. Anyone could have written this. You recognize his hand." He did. The knowledge appeared in the stillness of his shoulders. Arabella pointed to the thorn inside the circle. "Have you seen that mark?" "No." Lady Maud set down her cup. "I have." Both turned to her. "On the corner of old commercial letters at Larkmere," she said. "Your father used to receive them from Trieste and Hamburg. Gideon handled the correspondence." Rowan looked again at the paper. "Gideon became my father's secretary after Matthew died. He kept the estate from collapse." "Did he?" Arabella asked. "Or did he make certain you believed only he could? You are accusing a peer of forgery on the strength of a mark inside a fan." "I am asking to see the papers he managed. The estate correspondence is private." "Then remain privately deceived." She refolded the message. Ryan's hand came down over the fan before she could take it. "There are letters at Larkmere I cannot reconcile." Lady Maud went very still. He continued. "A French insurance claim, 2 Italian shipping contracts, and a set of Prussian bonds. Gideon says they are ordinary obligations inherited from my father. The sums do not agree." "And you cannot read them?" Arabella asked. "I read French, enough to insult a woman at a ball." The corner of Lady Maud's mouth twitched. Rowan ignored it. "The legal phrasing is beyond me. I have paid translators. Each gave a different interpretation." Arabella glanced at the paper in her hand. 3 unfinished foreign phrases. 3 sets of foreign obligations. Her father had not hidden a solution. He had hidden a direction. "I will examine them," she said. Rowan's expression hardened with suspicion almost at once. "Why?" "Because, if the same hand appears in every tongue, I may be able to prove who wrote the dispatch that destroyed my father. And if it proves he wrote it—" The question struck, but she held his gaze. "Then I will stop defending a lie." Something in Rowan's face shifted. "My terms," she continued, "are 4 guineas a week, private lodging, access to every related paper, and freedom to report anything I find to a solicitor of my choosing. 4 guineas. A kitchen stool would be cheaper." Lady Maud laughed aloud. Rowan looked from his aunt to Arabella, then back to the strip bearing his dead brother's name. 3 guineas, and your travelling expenses. 4, and you make the offer in writing. You bargain like a horse dealer. No horse dealer would begin after being insulted before 80 witnesses without doubling his price. For the first time, Rowan almost smiled. 4, he said. Arabella lifted the fan from beneath his hand. Then I will come to Larkmere. The journey north took a day and a half. Rain replaced the London snow, turning the roads to rutted brown ribbons. Larkmere Court appeared at dusk beyond black yews, its old stone dark against bare woods and a silver lake. Beneath the porte-cochere, Arabella noticed that a footman's shoes had been resoled with leather of 2 different shades. Rowan noticed her noticing. "The estate is not prosperous," he said as Lady Maud was helped down. "Prosperity rarely mends a left shoe with brown leather and a right with black." His mouth flattened. "Gideon says the harvest failures were worse than reported. Does Lord Gideon say everything here?" "Until this week. He said most things I had reason to believe." Inside, the great hall smelled of peat, smoke, and cold stone. Near the staircase hung Captain Matthew Harcourt in a red coat. Arabella stopped. Rowan's voice came from behind her. He was 29. "My father said he was the only man in the delegation who questioned the altered route." Rowan looked at the portrait. "Matthew wrote to me the week before he died. He said Fenwick had become secretive. He was trying to identify a leak. That was his claim." Arabella turned. "You invited me here to examine evidence. If you intend to use each room as a place to repeat the verdict, we will waste both time and candles." For several seconds, the only sound was the crackle of the hall fire. Then Rowan gestured toward the east passage. "The archive room is this way." The archive occupied the coldest corner of the house. A long table held 3 locked dispatch boxes, while a small stove did little more than warm its own legs. Lord Gideon Strath stood beside the table. He was a lean man of 40, with pale lashes and a voice made gentle by practice. His dark green coat was cut in the first stare of fashion. On his right hand he wore a gold signet ring engraved with a hawk. "Miss Fenwick," he said, "we meet again." Arabella remembered him standing in her father's rooms while officials opened cupboards and shook books by their spines. He had worn mourning for Matthew then. He had not looked mournful. "My lord." Gideon's gaze touched the ivory fan at her waist. "I was sorry to hear of Sir Elias's death. You might have replied to one of my 7 letters. There was nothing I could say that would have altered his position. Returning his papers would have altered mine." Gideon gave Rowan a look of patient concern. "I advised against this arrangement." "You learned of it 2 hours ago," Rowan said. "That was sufficient." Arabella moved to the table. The 3 boxes bore labels in French, Italian, and German. On the smallest, someone had pressed black wax into a circular seal. At its center was a thorn. "Where did this come from?" she asked. Gideon did not look at the box. "Hamburg, I believe. The seal, a commercial mark. Nothing more." She took out her father's hidden strip and placed it beside the impression. The marks were not similar. They were identical. Royan leaned over the table. The blood seemed to leave his face. Gideon examined the 2 thorns and sighed. "Sir Elias spent years among these documents," he said. "If he copied a creditor's mark, it proves only that he had access, or that the creditor copied his," Arabella replied. "You see innocence because you require it, and you see guilt because it made you indispensable." The stove gave a sharp metallic click. Gideon's mild expression disappeared for less than a heartbeat. When it returned, Arabella knew she had found the first break in his mask drawn unlocked the French box. "No papers leave this room," he said. "No one works here alone. Miss Fenwick reports directly to me." Gideon's pale eyes shifted toward his cousin. "You trust her?" Rowan looked at Arabella. "I trust the test," he said. "Not yet the translator." Arabella removed her gloves 1 finger at a time. "Then we are equal, my lord," she said. "I trust neither." They began the next morning. Arabella requested plain paper. Sharpened quills, sand, a magnifying lens, and sealing wafers in 3 colors. Gideon objected to the expense of a second lamp. Rowan ordered four. For 7 days, the archive room became a world apart. The French papers insured wool shipped through Calais. The Italian contracts promised payment for marble never delivered. The German bonds secured a loan against 1,200 acres of timber. Separately, each obligation seemed plausible. Together, they would ruin the estate by Michaelmas. Arabella compared the foreign wording, its literal meaning, and what a native speaker would understand. Rowan checked every figure and date. On the 3rd day, he brought coffee before dawn because he had noticed she preferred it to chocolate. On the 4th, she found a mistake. The German bond described Larkmere's western forest as free von Ellen Lasten, free of every burden or encumbrance. Yet the same paragraph claimed the creditor would assume the customary obligation to collect fallen timber for the tenants. The two statements cannot both be true, she said. Ron came around the table. Why not? Because the right to gather fallen wood is itself an encumbrance. A German lawyer would not contradict his own definition within 4 lines. An English lawyer might. An Englishman translating into German might not understand he had done it. Their shoulders almost touched as she pointed to the text. Rowan smelled of rain and ink. He had stopped wearing the expression that announced her presence as an inconvenience. In the archive's weak morning light, fatigue had softened the hard line of his mouth. There, she said. The phrase ohne Rücksicht literally means without looking back in ordinary speech, but here it has been used to mean without regard to. It is grammatically possible. It is not natural. My French insurance letter contains sans regarder en arrière. Arabella's pulse quickened, the same clumsy image. Rowan pulled the French page from its box. In the margin, beside a calculation, was the thorn mark. They opened the Italian contract, senza guardare indietro, without looking back 3 languages. One English thought Arabella removed the strip from her fan. Her father's first unfinished phrase in each language began with the same words. He found it, she whispered. He knew the documents had a common author. Rowan's finger rested beside the Italian line. A common translator, not a translator, a forger. A competent translator would preserve meaning, not English habits. The archive door opened. Gideon entered without knocking. I hope I am not interrupting. Rowan placed one hand over the hidden strip. You are, he said. Gideon's eyes moved across the 3 papers. Have you discovered another reason to delay necessary payments? Who prepared these translations? Rowan asked. Agents abroad. Name them. The records are old. Then the names should be in the records. Gideon walked toward the table. Arabella noticed a smear of black wax on the edge of his right cuff. Cousin, he said, your grief is being used against you. Miss Fenwick came here determined to erase her father's crime. Every blot will become a conspiracy if it serves that purpose. Rowan did not move his hand from the strip. Did you prepare these papers? No. The answer arrived too quickly. Arabella lifted the Italian contract. Then you will not object if Signor Belandi examines this. A merchant is not a lawyer. He is the man whose company seal appears on the final page. Gideon's gaze sharpened. Contacting foreign creditors without my preparation would announce weakness. Fraud is weaker, she said. He smiled at her with no warmth. A dangerous word from a Fenwick. Rowan stepped between them. You will address Miss Fenwick as the professional I hired, he said. The sentence was quiet. It changed the room. Gideon bowed. As you wish. When he left, the door clicked shut with careful gentleness. Arabella looked at Rowan. You have begun to trust the translator. I have begun to distrust the interruption. It was not a confession of faith. It was better than a flattering lie. That afternoon, Rowan took her to the western wood. The path ran through beech and larch, their naked branches webbed against a pearl-gray sky. Cottages clustered near a frozen stream. Outside one, Two children gathered sticks into a basket while their mother watched from the doorway. If the bond is enforced, Rowan said, the creditor may fence these woods, and the families lose their customary fuel. 73 households. Arabella looked at him. He knew the number without consulting a paper. They walked farther. At the schoolhouse, the roof sagged above one window. Matthew planned to repair it, Rowan said. After he died, my father stopped every improvement. Gideon said the estate could not afford sentiment. A roof is not sentiment. No. Can the estate afford Lady Cecily's marriage settlement? The question stopped him. Ween moved through the dry fern at their feet. Lady Cecily brings £40,000, he said. That was not what I asked. His expression closed. My marriage is not among the documents you were hired to translate. It is among the debts you intend her fortune to pay. Do you object to practical marriages? I object to women being described as money while men call themselves practical. He gave a short, humorless laugh. You have an answer for everything, only in 3 languages. This time his smile appeared before he could prevent it, revealing the younger brother he must once have been before grief, taught him to treat uncertainty as danger. Then a horse broke from the trees. Gideon reined in near them. Mud splashed to the skirts of his coat. A letter has come from London. He held out a folded sheet. Ryan broke the wafer. His eyes moved quickly down the page. What is it? Arabella asked. Lady Cecily and her father arrive tomorrow. Lord Ormond wants the betrothal articles signed by Friday. Gideon looked at Arabella. An excellent reason to finish this distraction. Arabella watched Rowan fold the letter. By Friday, he could save his estate with a rich wife, or risk it for the word of a woman whose father he believed had killed his brother. Lady Cecily arrived with 7 trunks, 2 maids, a pug, and the settled conviction that Larkmere already belonged to her. At dinner she addressed Arabella only once. Do companions dine with the family in the north? Lady Maud buttered a roll. Only those who speak more languages than the family. Rowan lowered his wine to hide something that might have been amusement. Lord Ormond was a thick-necked man with an expensive waistcoat and the alert eyes of a creditor. He discussed the marriage articles between courses as if ordering repairs to a carriage. Lady Cecily would bring £40,000. 10,000 would be paid at marriage. The remainder would be held by trustees, with an allowance for her separate use. The phrase caught Arabella's attention. Under English coverture, a married woman's property ordinarily passed under her husband's control, but wealthy families used settlements and trustees to preserve her portion. Lady Cecily would enter marriage with protections negotiated in rooms where poorer women were never invited. The western timber must be included as security. Lord Ormond said. Ryan's fork stopped. Gideon answered before he could. Of course. No, Rowan said. Silence settled across the table. Lord Ormond's cheeks darkened. I was told the timber was unencumbered. Its legal condition is under review. Gideon placed his napkin beside his plate. A translation question, nothing more. Then it will survive examination, Rowan replied. Lady Cecily looked at Arabella. Is this her doing? Miss Fenwick found the discrepancy. A companion is delaying our marriage. Arabella kept her hands folded. A German bond is delaying it, my lady. I merely read the words. Your talent for reading what does not concern you is remarkable. Cecily, Rowan warned. She turned to him. You defend her very quickly. The pug growled beneath the table. Lady Maud offered it a piece of pheasant. At last, someone has expressed the evening's manners honestly. Dinner ended before the pudding. Later, Arabella returned to the archive to lock away her notes. The corridor was unlit. As she reached the door, she heard paper move inside. She waited. A line of candlelight showed beneath the threshold. Rowan, she called. The sound stopped. Arabella opened the door. The room was empty. A casement window stood ajar despite the rain. Papers lifted and fell in the cold draft. On the central table, her German notes were gone. She crossed to the window. Mud marked the stone sill. Far below, a figure moved along the yew walk toward the old chapel. Arabella seized a lamp and followed. Rain struck her face the instant she stepped outside. Her slippers sank into the path. The figure ahead disappeared behind the chapel wall. She reached the arched door and pushed it open. The chapel smelled of wet mortar and extinguished candles. Her lamp showed sheeted pews, a cracked marble saint, and a man standing near the Harcourt memorials. It was not Gideon. Mr. Jonas Pritchard, the family solicitor, held Arabella's notes beneath one arm. "Miss Fenwick," he said, "you should not have come here. Those belong to me. They concern the Earl's property. They concern forged obligations." Pritchard removed his spectacles. Rain had darkened the shoulders of his coat. "Lord Wexbury will marry Lady Cecily, pay the bonds, and keep his tenants in their cottages. If he follows your questions, Lord Ormond will withdraw, the creditors will descend, Larkmere will be sold in pieces. So you stole my work. I am preventing an old scandal from destroying another family. Who told you to?" His eyes moved toward the memorial of Captain Matthew. "Give me the notes," Arabella said. "Go back to London." "No." Pritchard's tired face hardened. "Your father said the same thing." Arabella's breath caught. "You spoke to him the night before his arrest. He came to my office with 3 documents and a broken seal. He believed Lord Gideon had been creating foreign debts through shell companies." "Why did you not testify?" "Because Gideon showed me the altered dispatch bearing your father's cipher. He said he would deliver it to the Crown and see Fenwick hanged if I interfered. My father died disgraced because you were afraid." Pritchard looked down. "Yes." The admission had barely left him when a shadow moved behind the side screen. Pritchard saw it too. "Who is there?" The lamp went out. Glass shattered in the darkness. Arabella heard Pritchard cry out. Then the heavy sound of a body striking stone. She dropped beside the nearest pew as footsteps crossed the chapel. A hand caught the back of her cloak. Arabella drove the brass base of the lamp behind her with both hands. It struck bone. The grip loosened. She ran. Rain and darkness swallowed the path. She heard pursuit for several yards, then a shout from the house. "Arabella!" Rowan came toward her without a coat, carrying a lantern. He caught her by the shoulders before she slipped on the wet stones. "What happened?" "Pritchard." In the chapel they returned together. The solicitor lay unconscious beside the memorial step. Blood darkened his hair, but he breathed. Arabella's notes were scattered across the floor. The intruder was gone. Rowan knelt beside Pritchard and shouted for servants. When the butler hurried in, Rowan sent one man for the surgeon and another to close every gate on the estate. Arabella gathered the wet pages. One was missing, the sheet on which she had written the matching phrase in all 3 languages. On the chapel floor near the shattered lamp lay a gold signet ring. A hawk was engraved into its face. Rowan picked it up. "Gideon," Arabella said. His hand closed around the ring. "Or someone who wants us to believe it was Gideon." The old doubt returned so quickly that it felt like an insult renewed. Arabella stared at him. Rainwater ran from her hair onto her cheeks. "You heard enough in the ballroom to know I do not require you to think me foolish," she said. "Do not require me to think you are." She walked back toward the house before he could answer. Pritchard regained consciousness near dawn. Gideon had not been found, and one horse was missing from the east stable. Pritchard opened his eyes. "The papers," he whispered. "Safe," Rowan said. "Who struck you?" Pritchard's gaze found the signet ring in Rowan's hand. Not Gideon. Arabella's stomach tightened. "Who?" Rowan asked. "I did not see. But Gideon gave me that ring 3 years ago. I kept it in my dispatch case." "Your case is missing," Lady Maud said. Pritchard closed his eyes. "Then someone took it." "You told Miss Fenwick that Gideon threatened her father," Rowan said. "Was that true?" "Yes. Why protect him now? I am not. Pritchard struggled for breath. The man in the chapel was taller. He smelled of cloves. Arabella looked toward Rowan. At dinner, Lord Ormond had chewed a clove after every course. The bedchamber door opened. Lady Cecily stood on the threshold in a white morning wrapper, her face bloodless. "My father is gone," she said. "So is his valet." Rowan rose. "When, an hour ago." He left a note saying the match was finished. In her hand was a crumpled page. Arabella read it over her shoulder. Lord Ormond accused Rowan of endangering Lady Cecily's fortune, and declared the proposed union impossible. At the bottom, beneath his signature, was a faint circular stain in black wax. "A thorn by breakfast." Gideon returned to Larkmere on a lathered horse. He claimed he had ridden to the northern boundary after receiving news of a fallen bridge. The groom responsible for the missing horse confirmed the story. Gideon's signet ring remained on his finger. "A duplicate," Arabella said when Rowan showed him the ring from the chapel. Gideon turned it over. "Pritchard has had it for years." "Lord Ormond knew that?" Rowan asked. "I could not say. Try." Gideon glanced toward Lady Cecily, who sat rigid beside the fire. "Ormond invested in some of the Continental companies. He may fear that Miss Fenwick's inquiry will expose him." Lady Cecily rose. "My father is not a forger." "No one has called him one," Arabella said. "You have brought disgrace into this house since the moment you entered it." Her voice broke on the last word. For the first time she looked less like a cruel rival and more like a daughter watching certainty fall away. Arabella softened. "My lady, did your father ever use a private commercial seal?" Lady Cecily pressed a hand to her throat. "A black thorn. It was the mark of his investment society." Gideon shut his eyes briefly. Rowan saw. "You knew," he said. "I suspected. How long?" "After Miss Fenwick found the phrase." Rowan crossed the room in 2 strides. "You let Ormond dine at my table while you suspected he held fraudulent bonds against my land?" "I was trying to learn how much he knew." "You were trying to preserve your own part in it." Gideon's face changed. The gentleness fell away. "My part kept Larkmere solvent," he said. "Your father borrowed after Matthew's death. Ormond supplied money through foreign houses because no English bank would touch the estate. I translated the agreements. I marked the papers. That is all." Arabella took out her father's strip. "Did you translate the compromise dispatch too?" Gideon stared at the unfinished phrases. "No. You used the same English image in French, Italian, and German, without looking back. My father found it in the dispatch that killed Captain Harcourt. Then your father forged these documents. He wrote this before he was accused." Gideon turned to Rowan. "You cannot believe her." Rowan's gaze remained on his cousin. "Yesterday I might have said the same, and today—" Rowan looked at Arabella. The room waited with her. "Today," he said, "I believe the woman who has shown me her evidence over the man who concealed his. It was the first time he had chosen her without qualification." Gideon stepped back as if struck. Then he bowed. "You will regret that choice." He left before Rowan could order the doors closed. By the time servants reached his rooms, every drawer stood open. His clothes remained. His private papers did not. On the writing desk lay a single ticket for the night mail to London. It had been purchased in Arabella's name. The ticket was a trap so obvious that ignoring it would have been another kind of trap. By noon, a London newspaper had printed a paragraph claiming the daughter of the disgraced Sir Elias Fenwick had obtained employment at Larkmere under false pretenses, stolen financial papers, and fled toward the capital. The item did not name its source. It did not need to. The words were enough to turn suspicion into pursuit. "A magistrate may issue a warrant," Rowan said. Arabella read the paragraph a second time. "Then we must reach London before it does. You cannot travel openly. If I hide, Gideon's lie becomes the only visible story. If you are arrested, the truth will not protect you quickly enough. It protected your brother even less quickly." He flinched. Arabella folded the paper. I will not spend another 3 years waiting for powerful men to decide when my name may be spoken without contempt. Rowan came closer. This is not only your name. No, it is your land, your tenants, your brother, and the fortune of the woman you nearly married. That is why Gideon expects us to divide. He looked at her for a long moment. We leave within the hour, he said. They travelled in Lady Maud's plain carriage with no crest on the door. Pritchard was too weak to accompany them, but he signed a sworn statement before the local magistrate. Lady Cecily remained at Larkmere. Her father had sent no word. Rain froze on the road as evening fell. Arabella held her father's message on her lap while Rowan sat opposite. What will you do if the foreign merchants deny knowledge? He asked. Listen to how they deny it. That is not a legal strategy. Neither was insulting me in French. He looked toward the dark window. I believe that because your father had caused my family pain, any pain I caused you was smaller. It was a convenient arithmetic. Uncertainty frightened you. It still does. He met her eyes. At Calder House I apologized where it cost me nothing. It cost you some pride. I possess a surplus. She almost smiled. Druin leaned forward, forearms on his knees. When this is finished, I will correct the injury where I made it, before the same people, before every one of them who will come. Even if my father is proved guilty, my conduct remains mine, whatever he did. Until that moment, Arabella had feared Rowan's respect depended upon her being right. His words gave her somewhere to set that fear down. The carriage struck a rut. The fan slipped from her lap. Rowan caught it before it fell. As he handed it back, his thumb brushed the repaired ivory guard. There is another crack, he said. Arabella examined it. The inside edge had separated, exposing a line of paper finer than the first. Using the tip of a fruit knife, Rowan eased the pieces apart. A second strip emerged, covered with tiny figures in one sentence, "The seal is not the proof." The date beneath it is below the words. Sir Elias had copied a watermark, a crown above the number 15. 1815, Rowan said. Arabella's heart began to beat faster. The dispatch that condemned him was dated June 1813. Paper could remain unused for years, but it cannot be used 2 years before it was made. Rowan held the strip beside the window. Where is the original dispatch? The Foreign Office returned it to your father after the inquiry. Gideon kept my father's private case after his death. Then he has carried the proof with him all this time. At the next posting in, Rowan sent 3 express letters, one to Lady Maud, one to the Comte de Rochefort, and one to a Bow Street magistrate who had served with Matthew. Arabella wrote to Signor Belandi and Baron von Eltz in their own languages. She asked each man to attend Calder House the following evening and bring the seals used by their firms during the years in question. They reached London after sunrise. Lady Maud had arrived before them. She sat in the blue drawing-room at Calder House, wearing amethyst silk, and the expression of a general who had been offered a battlefield. "I have invited everyone," she said. Ron removed his wet gloves. "Everyone necessary? Everyone who laughed." By 6 o'clock, carriages crowded Calder Square. The invitation described an examination of forged commercial instruments affecting one of England's oldest estates. Scandal succeeded where courtesy might have failed. The same men and women who had watched Arabella's humiliation arrived early enough to secure the best view. 80 guests entered the ballroom. The musicians' gallery stood empty this time. In its place, a long green baize table had been arranged beneath the chandeliers. 3 foreign documents lay upon it beside their disputed seals. The ivory fan rested near Arabella's hand. She wore the same dove-gray gown. Lady Maud had offered her blue satin. Arabella refused. She wanted no one to mistake the woman before them for someone transformed by finer silk. Rowan stood to her left. The Comte de Rochefort, Signor Belandi, and Baron von Eltz waited opposite. Mr. Pritchard's sworn statement lay sealed beside them. 7 o'clock struck. Gideon did not come. At 5 minutes past, the ballroom doors opened. Lord Ormond entered with 2 officers. Gideon walked behind him. Lady Cecily followed. Her father turned on her. "You were told to remain at Larkmere." "I have spent my life being told what will preserve my comfort," she said. "It has preserved only my ignorance." She carried a black dispatch case in both hands. Gideon saw it and stopped. Rowan stepped forward. "Lord Ormond, you appear to have brought officers to my aunt's assembly to arrest a thief." Ormond pointed at Arabella. "That woman entered Larkmere under a false purpose and stole papers belonging to my companies." One officer unfolded a warrant. Murmurs moved through the room. Arabella heard the old accusation rising around her. Fenwick, thief, foreign papers. A daughter repeating her father's crime. Rowan moved between her and the officer. "You will wait," he said. "Interfering with a warrant is unwise, Wexbury. Then let us all become wiser before the evening ends." Gideon approached the table. "There is no mystery." Sir Elias created false obligations and hid copies among Harcourt papers. His daughter found them and attempted to use them to clear his name. "You expect us to believe my father forged debts against an estate he did not own?" Arabella asked. "He sold information. Why not sell paper? Because the paper sold him first." She turned to the Comte de Rochefort and addressed him in French. "Monsieur le Comte, did the Compagnie Rouennaise insure Harcourt wool under the instrument before you?" The Comte lifted the document. "No. The company named here closed in 1809. This paper is dated 1812. Arabella pointed to the seal. "Is it genuine? The outer device is copied. The motto is wrong. Our seal reads La foi soutient le commerce. This says La foi, the liver sustains commerce." Laughter rippled through the guests, then died under Arabella's gaze. "A native writer would not confuse them," she said in English. "A man copying sounds from a dictionary might." She turned to Signor Belandi and spoke in Italian. "Did your father's firm contract to supply marble for Larkmere?" "Never." Belandi placed his own seal beside the imprint. "This wax shows a tower with 2 windows. Ours has 3. My grandfather added the 3rd for his 3 sons in 1798. And the Frei senza guardare indietro?" He shook his head. "Possible words. Impossible business Italian. It sounds like an Englishman refusing to turn around." The guests shifted. Several looked toward Gideon. Arabella faced Baron von Eltz. In German, she asked, "Would a bond from your house describe land as free of encumbrance, while preserving tenant rights upon the same land?" "Never," the Baron said. "One clause destroys the other." No competent German clerk prepared this. He pressed his heavy silver seal into fresh wax. Its eagle differed from the blurred bird on the bond in the angle of its wings. Arabella returned to English. 3 countries, 3 false companies or copied seals, 3 documents written by a person who carried the same English habit into every language. She laid her father's first hidden strip beside the papers. Sir Elias identified that habit before he was accused. He wrote it here, without looking back. Gideon's expression remained composed, but his right hand had begun to tremble. Lord Ormond laughed harshly. "A phrase proves nothing. Then perhaps a date will." Lady Cecily placed the black dispatch case on the table. "I took this from my father at Larkmere," she said. "He threatened to send me to my aunt if I opened it. I decided my aunt could endure me." Ormond lunged for the case. Rowan caught his arm. The officers moved at once, separating them. Lady Cecily drew a key from her bodice and unlocked the case. Inside lay the original compromise dispatch from 1813. Sir Elias Fenwick's seal appeared beside the signature. His office cipher marked the lower corner. The sight of both made Arabella's stomach turn. For 3 years, those 2 details had been treated as a complete truth. Gideon found his voice. There, her father's guilt in his own hand. Arabella lifted the page toward the chandelier, then paper glowed between her fingers. Near the lower edge, a pale shape appeared, a crown above the number 15. "This sheet was manufactured in 1815, she said. 2 years after the date written upon it, the ballroom erupted." The Bow Street officer took the document and held it to the light. His companion examined the watermark, then looked at Gideon. "Where was this paper kept?" Rowan answered. "In a private case controlled by Lord Gideon after my father's death." "A case found in Ormond's possession," Gideon snapped. Ormond rounded on him. "You prepared every page." The accusation struck the room like a dropped tray. Gideon's face emptied. Ormond pointed at the foreign documents. "He said the debts would force Harcourt to sell the western timber. He said the girl's father would bear the old scandal forever." "Be silent," Gideon said. "You told me no one would examine the languages." Gideon looked at Arabella. "No one was meant to. There it was. Not a full confession. Not yet." But enough truth had entered his voice for every person in the room to hear it. Arabella touched the ivory fan. "My father examined them." Gideon's restraint broke. "Your father was a clerk who forgot his place. Matthew was a younger son who would not stop asking questions. They forced a choice." Rowan went still. "What choice, the estate or them?" "You sent Matthew onto the Genoa road." "I altered a route. Ormond's men were meant to take the dispatch case, not kill him." Lady Maud gripped her cane with both hands. Arabella watched Rowan receive the truth he had demanded for years. It did not look like triumph. His face became that of a brother standing beside a grave that had just opened again. Gideon saw the weakness and reached for the original dispatch. Arabella placed her hand over it first. He seized her wrist. Rowan crossed the space between them and tore Gideon's hand away. The officers took Gideon by both arms. Ormond shouted that he had been deceived until the second officer informed him that fraud committed by a persuaded man remained fraud. As they were led toward the doors, Gideon turned back to Rowan. "Larkmere would have died without me." Rowan looked past him toward Arabella. "No," he said. "You merely taught us to mistake the poison for medicine." The doors closed. No one in the ballroom spoke. The climax had passed, but the wound remained before its original witnesses. Ron walked to the center of the floor. He faced the 80 guests who had laughed at Calder House weeks earlier. "In this room," he said, "I spoke French because I believed Miss Fenwick could not understand me. The truth is that I chose a foreign language so my cruelty could be enjoyed by a few and denied to everyone else." No glass moved. No fan stirred. "I called her ignorant. She read what my advisers could not. I called her a beggar. She risked her safety to protect land that was not hers and tenants who could offer her nothing. I treated her father as guilty because certainty was easier than justice." He turned to Arabella. "Sir Elias Fenwick discovered the fraud that killed my brother. His accusation was forged. His disgrace was false. I will place that correction before the Foreign Office, the Gazette, and every household in which I repeated the lie." His voice lowered. "Miss Fenwick, I wronged you where all could hear. Before the same witnesses, I ask your forgiveness." Arabella looked at the people around them. Some lowered their eyes. The young woman with the peacock feather fan was crying. The comte bowed to her. Belandi placed one hand over his heart. She looked back at Rowan. "An apology is not proved by how beautifully it is spoken," she said. His face tightened, but he nodded. "I know. It is proved by what a person does after speaking. Then judge the remainder of my life." She let the silence hold for one final breath. "I will." Lady Maud struck her cane once against the floor. "Someone find the musicians. Justice has made us all intolerably sober." The room exhaled. Music returned to the gallery. No one attempted to turn the evening into an ordinary ball, but people moved again. Witnesses signed statements. The foreign merchants sealed their denials. The officers carried the forged dispatch away in a locked case, Near midnight, Lady Cecily approached Arabella. "I was cruel to you. I believed rank made me safe. It only made ignorance comfortable. What will you do?" "Learn enough to stop being managed. Perhaps I shall begin with Italian. Begin with the difference between liver and loyalty in French." Lady Cecily laughed through her tears. "It was not friendship, but it was honest. Lord Ormond confessed to financing the false companies in exchange for a reduced charge and the protection of his daughter's settled funds. Gideon refused confession, but Pritchard's statement, the foreign seals, the dated watermark, and Gideon's words before 80 witnesses left him little shelter. The Crown corrected Sir Elias Fenwick's record without ceremony. Governments seldom displayed the same enthusiasm for clearing a name that they showed in blackening it. Still, the notice appeared. His pension arrears were paid to Arabella. Captain Matthew's final report was entered into the official file beside Sir Elias's warning. At Larkmere, the fraudulent bonds were voided. The Western Wood remained open to 73 families. Rowan sold paintings and racehorses to meet the genuine debts, and the school roof was repaired before the spring rain. Arabella returned to Calder House. She used part of her father's arrears to settle every debt attached to his burial. She placed the remainder with trustees in her own name. She accepted translation work from Belandi, von Eltz, and 2 London solicitors who had recently discovered that a woman's intelligence became respectable when profitable men required it. Rowan wrote each week, sending corrected notices, Larkmere accounts, and the schoolmaster's report without asking these actions to purchase her affection. In April, Arabella travelled north at Lady Maud's invitation. Larkmere's beech trees had opened into green. Children's voices came through the repaired schoolhouse windows. Inside, girls sat beside boys at the long desks. Rian waited near the stream. "You came," he said. "Your aunt threatened to collect me in person. She threatened me with the same journey." They walked beneath the new leaves. At the edge of the western wood he stopped. "I have an offer," he said. Arabella raised one brow. "In writing?" He held out a folded document. It was not a marriage proposal. It was a deed establishing a school for languages and commercial correspondence at Larkmere, open to the daughters of tenants, tradesmen, and impoverished gentlewomen. Arabella would direct it for a salary of £300 a year. Its funding was placed beyond the control of any future earl. 400, she said. Then he laughed. The sound startled birds from the hedge. 400, he agreed, and a house. The rooms must have good light, south-facing, a separate entrance. Of course, she folded the deed. You have learned to bargain. I had a severe tutor. His smile faded into something quieter. There is another offer, he said. This one I could not put into legal language without making it sound like a property transfer. That is what marriage often is. Ours would not be. He took one breath. I love you, Arabella. Not because you saved Larkmere, not because you cleared Matthew's name. I love the way you refuse easy answers. I love that you see the footman's repaired shoe and the child outside the school window. I love that when I am at my most certain, you make me earn the certainty. Her fingers tightened around the deed. You once thought me a well-dressed beggar. I was wrong about the dress as well. Gray is magnificent on you. She laughed despite herself. Then she grew serious. If I marry, the school remains under its trustees. My earnings remain for my separate use. I continue my work. The marriage settlement will say so before the banns are read. I have already instructed Pritchard to prepare exactly that. You assumed I would accept? No, I hoped you might negotiate. Arabella looked toward the schoolhouse. A girl near the window had risen to recite. Her small hand moved as she shaped unfamiliar words. And if I refuse, the deed remains yours, so does my respect. I will be miserable with dignity. You have never done anything with dignity quietly. I can learn. She stepped closer. Then begin with this. In French, she said, "Yes." In Italian, she said it again. In German, she said it a third time. Rowan's eyes closed with relief. "I understood the first," he murmured. "I wanted no room for error." They married in June at the Larkmere Chapel, where the stone had been scrubbed clean and the broken lamp replaced. Lady Cecily attended without her father, and spent half the breakfast speaking determinedly poor Italian to Signor Belandi. Lady Maud cried during the vows, denied it afterward, and blamed incense in a chapel that had none. Arabella did not surrender her name. The marriage register read Arabella Fenwick Harcourt by her own request. Years later, visitors still repeated the story of the night. She answered an earl in 3 languages. They told it as a victory of wit, polished and bright enough for a ballroom. Those who knew her understood the greater victory. She had forced a house built upon rank to make room for evidence. She had restored a dead man's honor without borrowing a living man's power. She had accepted love only after it learned the difference between admiration and respect. On winter mornings, light entered the south-facing schoolroom at Larkmere and fell across rows of open books. Girls who had once been expected to understand only obedience learned French contracts, Italian correspondence, and German law. Above the fireplace rested a single ivory fan, its cracked guard left visible. It no longer concealed the truth. It held the memory of the woman who had known how to read it. Thank you for watching Arabella's complete story, a story about dignity, truth, and the courage to answer when powerful people expect silence. If her journey from public humiliation to hard-won justice stayed with you, please like this video. It helps the algorithm carry more full-length historical romance stories to viewers who love them. Share it with a fellow historical romance lover, and subscribe to Secrets of Belgrave with notifications turned on so you do not miss the next story of heartbreak, courage, and redemption. And tell me in the comments, would you have forgiven Rowan after his public apology, or was Arabella more generous than you would have been?